Mid-flight from Amsterdam to JFK, a young girl passed her boarding pass to a flight attendant with a single word scrawled urgently, "Help!" The attendant's eyes widened in shock as she glanced at the note, her heart racing with concern. Little did she know, the actions that followed from the pilot would leave everyone on board stunned and on edge. With a grave expression, the pilot made an announcement over the intercom, sending a shiver down the passengers' spines. A young girl named Elena, who appeared no older than 12, nervously handed her boarding pass to a flight attendant mid-flight. On it, she had written a single word in shaky letters: "Help." The flight attendant, Lisa, tried to mask her concern, but her eyes widened and she quickly tucked the pass into her pocket. "Just stay calm. I'll be right back," she whispered. Lisa moved quickly through the aisle towards the cockpit, her heart pounding as she rehearsed what to say. Elena's desperate message needed immediate attention, but without causing panic among the other passengers. She knocked sharply on the cockpit door, the code that signaled urgency. Inside, Captain Madsen slid open the small window, his expression questioning. "We may have a serious problem," Lisa explained in a low tone as soon as the door was secured behind her. She handed the captain the boarding pass. Captain Madsen's jaw tightened as he read the message. "Prepare for a diversion," he decided after a moment's hesitation. "I'll make an announcement, something vague but plausible." Captain Madsen's voice was calm but grave as he addressed the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a technical issue, we will be making an emergency landing in Reykjavik." Murmurs filled the cabin as passengers exchanged confused glances. Elena kept her eyes downcast, trying to seem invisible. Lisa stayed close, her presence a silent promise of protection. As the plane began its descent, Elena felt the weight of the glances from those seated around her. She wished she could disappear. Why had she drawn attention to herself? But then she remembered her grandfather's last words before she boarded. "If you ever feel like you're in danger, don't hesitate to ask for help." The sudden change in flight path did not go unnoticed. In a back row, a pair of men whispered fiercely in a language Elena didn't recognize. They paused to glance at the cockpit and then at her, their eyes narrowing. Lisa observed this interaction, her instincts telling her that the situation was about to get more complicated and dangerous than she had feared. With Reykjavik's runway in sight, the tension in the cabin escalated. The flight crew operated with a quiet, methodical efficiency, securing everything for the unexpected landing. Lisa briefed her team in whispered tones. "Keep an eye on everyone, especially the young girl. Something isn't right." The wheels touched down with a jolt, and the plane taxied to a remote part of the airfield. Before anyone could get up, Icelandic police boarded. They spoke briefly with Captain Madsen before turning their attention to the passengers. The cabin held its breath, waiting. The officers were heavily armed and made their way through the cabin swiftly. One of the officers approached Elena. "We need you to come with us," he said in accented English. Confusion and fear crossed her face as she looked up at Lisa. The flight attendant nodded encouragingly, her hand on Elena's back. "It's okay. I'll come with you," she said, vowing silently to not leave the girl's side for a moment. As they disembarked, Elena saw more officers surrounding the men in the back row, who quickly found themselves handcuffed. The reality of the situation began to sink in, and Elena felt a mix of relief and overwhelming anxiety. What had she unwittingly become a part of? Lisa kept her hand firmly on Elena's shoulder, guiding her to the exit through the crowd of police. Led by a stern-faced officer, Elena and Lisa navigated through the quieter corridors of the Icelandic airport. The cold, sparse surroundings were a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere of the plane. They walked in silence, save for the officers' occasional instructions, echoing off the walls. Elena clung to Lisa's arm, seeking comfort in her presence as they were led away from the chaos of their fellow passengers. At the end of a long hallway, the officer opened a door to a small, dimly lit room. "Wait here," he instructed, pointing to two metal chairs against the wall. He assured them, "A detective will be with you shortly," before closing the door with a soft click. Lisa gave Alina's hand a reassuring squeeze, trying to offer some comfort in the sterile, unwelcoming space. Inside the interrogation room, Alina shifted uncomfortably in her chair. The stark white walls seemed to close in around her. Lisa noticed Alina's discomfort and offered a warm smile, whispering, "It'll be okay." Alina returned a weak smile, her eyes scanning the room's plain features: a clock, a mirror, and the closed door that seemed to seal their fate. Time seemed to slow as Lisa and Alina sat in silence. The soft hum of the air conditioning was the only sound in the otherwise quiet room. Both listened intently for footsteps, a voice, anything that might signal an end to their isolation. Lisa periodically checked her watch, each minute stretching longer than the last, heightening the tension between them. The silence was finally broken by a faint knock on the door. Lisa and Alina turned towards the sound, their anticipation palpable in the air. The door handle turned slowly, and the slight creak seemed louder than it was. They exchanged a glance, bracing themselves for what was to come, ready to face the next chapter of their unexpected ordeal. Lisa turned her chair to face Alina more directly. "Can you tell me why you wrote 'help' on your boarding pass?" Her tone was gentle, yet earnest, aiming to make Alina feel safe enough to open up. Alina fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve, her eyes darting towards the door before meeting Lisa's encouraging gaze. Alina swallowed hard, then spoke in a hushed tone. "I overheard some men talking. They mentioned my seat number and they didn't think I understood." She paused, her voice barely a whisper. "It made me scared." Lisa leaned in closer, nodding slowly to show she understood the gravity of Alina's fear. "You did the right thing," Lisa reassured her, placing a comforting hand over Alina's. "It's really brave to ask for help when you're scared." Her voice was calm and supportive, trying to alleviate some of Alina's distress. Alina's shoulders relaxed slightly, comforted by Lisa's presence and the affirmation that her fears were taken seriously. "They were acting weird, whispering and watching me," Alina continued, growing more confident as she spoke. Lisa's brows furrowed as she listened, piecing together the implications. "And they kept checking their phones after talking," Alina added. Lisa nodded, her mind racing with potential threats, preparing her next steps carefully. "Let's make sure the detective knows everything," Lisa suggested, her voice firm with resolve. "Whatever is going on might be bigger than we thought." Alina nodded, feeling a mix of nerves and a strange sense of relief that she was no longer facing this alone. Together, they prepared to share their story, aware of the gravity of what might unfold. "Why are you traveling alone, Alina?" Lisa asked, her voice soft but curious. Alina shifted in her chair, her eyes flickering with a hint of apprehension before she responded. "I'm going to meet my parents," she said, her voice steady but distant. "They're in the States." The simplicity of her answer belied the complexity of her emotions, evident in the tightness of her expression. Whenever Lisa pressed for more details about where her parents were or why they were separated, Alina became evasive. "They move around a lot," she would say, avoiding eye contact. The lack of specifics made Lisa wonder about the true nature of Alina's situation, but she knew better than to push too hard too fast. Lisa sensed there was more to Alina's story than she was letting on. "It's okay to tell me if there's more you're worried about," she offered gently, trying to open a door for Alina to share more freely. Alina looked up, her eyes meeting Lisa's, a mix of gratitude and fear playing across her features. Alina hesitated, then her voice dropped to a whisper. "It's complicated. We've been apart for reasons I don't fully understand," she confessed, her words heavy with unspoken stories. Lisa nodded, understanding the delicacy of family entanglements. She didn't press further, giving Elena the space to navigate her thoughts and choose her words. Their deep conversation was abruptly interrupted by the sound of the door creaking open. A detective stepped in, his demeanor warm yet professional. "Good afternoon," he greeted them with a kind smile. Lisa and Elena turned towards him. Their discussion paused mid-sentence, ready to restart under new scrutiny. The detective, introducing himself as Detective Arnar, greeted them with a kind smile. "Hello, I'm Detective Arnar. Please, Elena, start from the beginning and tell me everything you can," he requested in a thick Icelandic accent. Elena took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts under his encouraging gaze, ready to recount the events that had terrified her. Elena spoke up, her voice steady but laced with anxiety. "There were these men on the plane, talking quietly but looking at me. It scared me." Detective Arnar listened intently, nodding at intervals to show he was following her story. "That's when I wrote 'help' on my boarding pass. I didn't know what else to do," she explained, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Turning his attention to Lisa, Detective Arnar asked, "And Lisa, when did you realize Elena was actually in danger?" Lisa recounted her initial interaction with Elena. "When she handed me her boarding pass with 'help' written on it, I knew something was wrong." Her eyes were frightened. She spoke clearly, her concern for Elena evident in her tone. As they spoke, Detective Arnar scribbled notes diligently, his expression serious yet gentle. He occasionally asked clarifying questions, ensuring no detail was overlooked. His methodical approach conveyed a sense of authority and reassurance, helping both Elena and Lisa feel they were being taken seriously and that their information was crucial. "After hearing your stories, I want you to know, you're safe now," Detective Arnar reassured them as he closed his notebook. "We'll take every necessary step from here." His voice was firm yet comforting, promising security and action. Elena and Lisa exchanged relieved glances, feeling a weight lift off their shoulders as they awaited the next phase of their unexpected ordeal. Detective Arnar spread several photographs across the table. "Do you recognize any of these men?" he asked, watching Elena closely. Her eyes flicked across the images, scanning each face carefully until her hand stopped, hovering over two particular photos. "These are the ones," she said, her voice low but certain, pointing to the men she had overheard on the plane. Elena's finger tapped firmly on the photos of the men she had heard talking. "It was them," she confirmed, but shrugged slightly as she glanced at the other pictures. "I don't know who the others are," she admitted, her focus returning to the familiar faces. Her certainty provided a tangible lead in the unfolding investigation. As she sifted through the remaining photographs, one caught her attention. "Wait, who's this?" Elena murmured, leaning forward to get a better look at a face that seemed oddly familiar yet out of place. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she tried to place where she might have seen him before. Detective Arnar noticed Elena's interest in one photograph. "Do you know this man?" he asked, sliding the photo closer to her. Elena hesitated, her eyes locked on the image as if trying to unlock a memory. I think I've seen him before," she said slowly, her voice tinged with uncertainty and intrigue. Just as Elena was about to elaborate, the door burst open. Captain Madsen entered swiftly, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Sorry for the interruption," he said briskly, his eyes scanning the room. Elena paused, the words she was about to speak hanging in the air as the room shifted focus to the captain's sudden appearance. Captain Madsen strode to the center of the room, his voice firm. "I'll take it from here, Detective," he declared confidently. He then sat directly across from Elena and Lisa, his posture indicating the shift in command. Detective Arnar looked perplexed, but recognized the assertion of authority, slowly standing up to leave the room. The detective hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with leaving. "Are you sure, Captain?" he asked, his tone showing a mix of respect and concern. Madsen nodded firmly, not wavering. Yes, Detective. Thank you for your work. With a reluctant nod, Detective Arnar exited, leaving the room under Madsen's control. Once the door clicked shut, Madsen turned to Elena, his expression serious. "I should tell you, I'm not just a pilot," he began, his voice low. "I'm also an Interpol agent." Elena's eyes widened in surprise, and Lisa's posture stiffened. This unexpected twist explained the captain's authoritative demeanor, but raised many more questions. "I apologize for the danger and confusion," Madsen continued, his tone earnest. "I suspected that something might happen on this flight based on prior intelligence." His admission revealed a layer of complexity and danger that Elena and Lisa hadn't anticipated, making them reconsider every moment of the flight up until now. Elena and Lisa exchanged a quick, uneasy glance, sensing the gravity of what Madsen was sharing. Both leaned in, captivated and anxious about what might come next. "There's more to this situation than you might have guessed," Madsen hinted, preparing them for the revelations ahead. They braced themselves, aware that their ordeal was far from over. Captain Madsen's expression turned grave as he outlined his protective duties during the flight. "I was assigned to ensure your safety, Elena," he explained, his voice steady and reassuring. "We had intelligence suggesting you might be at risk." Elena listened intently, her previous confusion slowly transforming into an understanding of the gravity of her situation. He continued, "The flight crew and I were discreetly monitoring those men from the moment you boarded." Madsen's revelation shed light on the crew's previously unnoticed vigilance. "We had to be subtle to avoid escalating the situation unnecessarily," he added, emphasizing the need for their stealth. "Sorry for not telling you earlier," Madsen apologized, his eyes meeting theirs. "We couldn't risk alerting anyone who might be watching, including tipping off the suspects by making them aware of our suspicions." His apology was sincere, reflecting the delicate balance of maintaining security without causing panic. "Your action of writing help was crucial. It confirmed our concerns and triggered our protective protocol," Madsen explained. "We've already coordinated with both local and international authorities to ensure your continued safety." His words were meant to comfort, letting Elena and Lisa know that their situation was under control. "With a clear plan in place, I need your cooperation moving forward," Madsen stated firmly, standing up. He led Elena and Lisa towards a door at the back of the room. "Let's go to a secure room where we can better handle this." As they walked, Elena felt a mix of relief and anxiety, aware of the critical role she now played in this unfolding international drama. As they walked, Captain Madsen's voice lowered to a conversational tone. "You were on your way to reunite with your parents, weren't you?" he asked Elena. The question seemed casual, but his eyes searched hers for more than just a confirmation. Elena nodded slowly. When Madsen inquired further, "What's your father's name?" she replied softly, "Mika Robertson." At this, Madsen paused, his expression shifting to one of deep thought, as if the name carried a weight he had not expected. Without another word, Madsen gestured for them to follow him to a different area. He led Elena and Lisa to another room, this one lined with one-way glass, designed for discreet identification. The setup suggested that they were moving into a more serious phase of identification and verification. Inside, several men stood facing forward in a lineup. "Can you identify anyone here?" Madsen asked, his voice steady, giving no hint of his thoughts from moments before. Elena scanned the lineup intently, her eyes narrowing as she tried to match faces with her memory of the flight. As Elena counted the men in the lineup, she frowned. "There should be 4, she began, her confusion apparent. But before she could elaborate, a sudden commotion from the left side of the room caught everyone's attention, cutting her off mid-sentence. Her focus shifted abruptly to the source of the noise. Elena and Lisa were caught off guard as a group of men charged towards them, the leader's face twisted in rage. The sudden movement shattered the tense calm of the lineup room, and both women instinctively stepped back, their hearts racing. Officers sprang into action, darting past Alina and Lisa in a blur of movement. They closed in on the charging man, aiming to intercept him before he could reach Alina, who stood rooted to the spot, her eyes wide with fear. Just as the situation seemed about to escalate further, an unexpected figure darted from the sidelines. With a swift move, he tackled the enraged man to the ground, pinning him securely. The room echoed with the sounds of the scuffle as the assailant struggled under the weight of his captor. The officers quickly handcuffed the subdued attacker, pulling him up from the floor as he continued to shout angrily. Alina and Lisa watched, stunned, barely able to comprehend the rapid unfolding of events. The immediate danger was over, but the shock lingered in their expressions. Captain Madsen moved quickly to stand in front of Alina and Lisa, his presence a reassuring barrier to the chaos around them. "Stay behind me," he instructed firmly, glancing back to ensure they were unharmed. As he spoke, other officers worked to secure the remaining suspects, restoring a semblance of order to the shaken room. As the dust settled, the man who had intervened looked up and locked eyes with Alina. His gaze, intense and searching, found hers across the cluttered room. Their eyes met in a moment loaded with unspoken realization. Recognition dawned on Alina's face, transforming into a wide, tearful smile. "Dad!" she cried out, her voice choked with emotion. The room seemed to pause around them as her word echoed off the walls. Without hesitation, Alina rushed across the room, her steps quick and eager. When she reached him, they embraced tightly, a long, clinging hug that spoke volumes. Tears streamed down her face as she buried it in his shoulder, relief and love mingling in their tight grasp. From a short distance, Lisa watched the father-daughter reunion, a warm smile spreading across her face. She felt a profound relief, grateful that Alina was in the arms of the person she trusted most. This moment of joy amidst chaos brought a sense of peace to the room. The officers, noting the tender scene, approached cautiously and spoke in hushed tones. "We need to move you to a safer area," one officer explained gently. They guided Alina and her father, still embracing, away from the onlookers and potential threats, ensuring their safety as they walked to a more secure part of the facility. Alina's father, still holding her close, explained softly, "You were under protection without realizing it, sweetheart. Your help note activated a secretive safety protocol we had in place." His words revealed the layers of security that had silently guarded her from the shadows, ensuring her safety at every uncertain turn. Captain Madsen joined them, his face bearing a serious yet relieved expression. "Our quick response was crucial," he stated. "It ensured your safety, Alina, and helped us capture those who threatened you." His words highlighted the efficiency and timeliness of the operation that had unfolded around her unnoticed. Lisa stepped forward, her eyes bright with unshed tears of relief. "I'm so glad you're safe," she said to Alina, giving her a gentle hug. Turning to Alina's father, she added, "And thank you for protecting her." Her promise lingered in the air. "I'll be here if you need anything further." Captain Madsen, looking between Alina and her father, outlined the next steps. "We're increasing security at the airport and along your routes to ensure this doesn't happen again." His assurance was firm, projecting confidence that their journey onward would be guarded and safe. As the briefing ended, Alina stayed close to her father, her hand gripping his reassuringly. She felt a profound gratitude for his protection and the end of her terrifying ordeal. Surrounded by those who had safeguarded her, Alina finally felt a sense of peace and security, ready to move forward with her life.